solving quadratic equations. All of you know what a quadratic equation is. So the quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, where a is not equal to 0. A, b, c are all real numbers. So this is the general form of a quadratic equation. Now we are going to see how to solve quadratic equations, and different methods. You are going to see different methods. The first one, here the question is solve each equation by factoring. By factoring. So when you see problems like this on the quiz or exam, if it says solve equation by factoring, you have to show your work by this method, because you are going to see how to solve quadratic equations by other methods also. So here the problem is example 1, solve by factoring. The equation is x squared minus 9x is equal to 0. So is this the quadratic equation? Yes, it is. Here you have a, x squared, a is 1, b is negative 9, your c is 0, c can be 0, right? Only a cannot be 0, the x squared, the coefficient of x squared. So this is a quadratic equation. Here the question is, you are asked to solve by factoring. So all of you know how to factor. So how to factor this equation? What is the common factor you see for x squared and this negative 9x? X is a common factor. You see that? So pull that x out. See how I am writing down? Put a parenthesis. And then when x is out, whenever you pull something out, it's the same as you are dividing by that number. Okay? So here x is out, so what do you get inside? X, right? Here we have a minus. We pulled just a positive x out. So we have minus 9 is equal to 0. So here we have x times x minus 9 is equal to 0. And remember always, whenever you solve quadratic equations, make sure that you have the other side, it's 0 for this type of problems. If you have some other number there, you have to move that number here and then solve. So remember, 0 on one side. So x times x minus 9 is equal to 0. So and when here we have a product of two factors is equal to 0. So when will that happen? Either one of them must be equal to 0. For example, if it is a times b is 0, this is a definition. Product of two numbers is 0. What can you say about this? A has to be 0 or b has to be 0. To get a product is 0, right? So either a is 0 or b is 0, correct? So the same way here, x times this is equal to 0, x has to be 0 or x minus 9 has to be 0. Here we have already x is 0. Here we have to solve for x. Here x minus 9 is 0. This is a linear equation now. Add 9 both sides. You get x is equal to negative 9. This cancels out. So how many solutions we got for this problem, for this quadratic equation? 2 solutions. X is equal to 0 and x is equal to 9. So you can write like a set of 0, 9. These two are the solutions for this equation. Okay. So let's do another one. Example 2. Here again the problem, the question is solve by factoring. here the equation is v squared minus 9 is equal to 0. You are asked to solve this quadratic equation, and here the variable is v, and we are going to solve for v. And here the question is factoring. So don't think of adding 9 both sides and solving this problem. That is not the way you do for this type of a question. Okay, so we have to factor this. So how to factor this? What do you see here? We have v squared minus 9. Can you think of how to factor this one? This is a difference of squares, because we don't have any other common factor to pull it out, just like this problem. Here is our x is a common factor. We got like inside x minus 9 here. But can we do the same thing here? No. We have to look at this expression. This is v squared minus 9. There is no common factor to pull it out. So we have to think of any formulas to factor this, or you can use the trial and error method, but here we have two terms. It's easier to do by using the formula. What formula is that? Difference of squares, because 9 is 3 squared. This is v squared minus 3 squared. So we can use that formula, difference of squares formula. So what do you get? V squared minus 9 is nothing but v plus 3 times v minus 3. So we factored that v squared minus 9 as v plus 3 times v minus 3. Here again, got the same form. Product of two numbers is 0. So either v plus 3 has to be 0 or v minus 3 has to be 0 to get the product 0. So v plus 3 is equal to 0 or v minus 3 is equal to 0. So v plus 3 is 0. We are solving for v. So subtract 3. We need v alone. So v is equal to negative 3. Add 3 both sides. V is equal to positive 3. How many solutions you see here? 2 solutions. So the solutions for this problem are negative 3 and positive 3. So set of solutions. This is your answer. And here we don't have anything in the denominator, like in the previous problem you saw like a x plus 3 or x minus 2, x plus 5. Remember there we said x can't be some numbers. Only those ones you do only when you have expressions in the denominator. So here we have, for this problem, the solutions are negative 3 and positive 3. Like I said, you can always, after you get this, you can always go back and plug these values in the place of here v in the place of v, and you can check whether you get 0. Both sides have to be equal to each other. Another example, example 3. Solve, still the same question. Solve this equation by factoring. This is a quadratic equation. Now we have to try to factor and make sure the other side is 0. Here already it's 0, so we are good. So now we have to try to factor this. So how do we factor? In the previous 2 problems we had only 2 terms, so we did in a different way. Here we have to factor it by trial and error method, or you can use the grouping by writing this number as 2 numbers and you can group them. So in 2 different ways you can solve. I am going to do by the trial and error method. So here we have 2x squared. So let me try 2x and x. So that's 2x squared. And then we are going to check the middle term after we try. So here we have negative 3. So I am going to try for negative 3. What are the 2 numbers you multiply with to get a negative 3? 3 and a negative 1, or negative 3 and a positive 1, right? So we can try those numbers and we can check whether we got the middle term also correct, then we are done. So I'm going to try positive 1 and negative 3. Let's see, we may be lucky in the first step itself. So I'm just trying positive 1 and negative 3. So when you multiply this, you get negative 3. When we multiply these two, we get this. So we are good with these two. We have to make sure this middle term is good, right? Otherwise you're doing something wrong. So let's check this one. So this is positive x. So whenever to check the middle term, you multiply these two. 1 times x is x. Multiply these two. Negative 2 times 2x times negative 3, negative 6x. When you add those two, what do you get? Negative 5x. Do we have a negative 5x in the middle? Yes. So first term is good, last term is good, middle term is good. So we are good. So we factored this expression. So now we have to solve. Product of two factors is equal to 0. Now product of two terms is equal to 0. Now set each to 0 and solve. 2x plus 1 has to be equal to 0 only with the product. When the product will be 0, this has to be 0 or this has to be 0. Now we are good. We are solving for x. So subtract 1 both sides. We need epsilon. So 0 minus 1 negative 1. So divide both sides by 2 because 2x is negative 1. To get x, divide both sides by 2. So you get x is equal to negative 1/2. And this side, add 3 both sides. So x is equal to 3. How many solutions you got here? Again, 2 solutions. So the solution for this problem, the solutions. So let's put it in the set notation. Negative 1/2, comma, positive 3. That's your answer. Okay, let's see. So let me see whether we can do 2 more problems by factoring, solving a quadratic equation by factoring. Example 4. Let's do this one. Solve x times x minus 8 is equal to negative 12. Here again solve by factoring. So whenever you have this type of a question, remember I said you have to have one side 0, move everything to one side. So let's add 12 both sides. So I just added 12. So now this is the equation here. We are asked to solve by factoring. So what do we have to do here? Look at this step, and we are solving quadratic equation. So here we have to distribute this x. So this is x squared, x times x squared minus 8x plus 12 is equal to 0. So distribute first, and then we have this in this form. Now we can see whether we can factor this and solve for x. So here again you have a trinomial side, and I am going to do the same way I did so I put x and x, that's x squared, negative 2 and minus 6, negative 2 times negative 6. When you multiply these two, you get the last term, that's positive 12, that's good. X times x squared, first term, that's good. The middle term, let's try and see whether we got the middle term. Negative 2x, negative 6x. What is that? Negative 8x. So middle term also looks okay. So we are good. So product of this x minus 2 times x minus 6 is equal to 0. So what do we have to do? Set each to 0. X minus 2 is equal to 0, or x minus 6 is equal to 0. Now we have to solve for x. So add 2 both sides. So x is equal to 2 Add 6 both sides, x is equal to 6. So, the solutions for this problem are 2, 6. That's your answer. Okay. So, you saw how to solve quadratic equations by factoring. Now, I am going to show you how to solve quadratic equations. Solve each equation by the square root method. By the square root method. Okay. So, here example 1. Here solve this equation. Solve x squared is equal to 36 by the square root method. So, x squared is equal to 36. The square root method is, if x squared is equal to a number a real number, then x is equal to plus or minus square root of a. Okay. So, that is the main definition. So, x squared is equal to 36. So, what is x? X is equal to plus or minus square root of 36, and square root of 36 is 6. Otherwise, you just leave it like that. If you are not allowed to use a calculator, for example, if you get like square root of 17, then just say x is equal to plus or minus square root of 17. So, here in this case it is easier, you know immediately square root of 36 is 6. So, x is equal to plus or minus 6. So, the solutions for this problem, we can write it as negative 6 comma plus 6 and negative 6. That is your answer. So, now you know what a square root method is. Let us do one more problem. Example 2. Here again solve. Solve this quadratic equation by square root method. So, whenever you have a square root method, see something square is equal to x squared is equal to a. So, x is plus or minus square root of a. This square is equal to 1, something squared. So, number square is equal to 1. So, this is equal to, you see in the place of x we have x plus 2, the square. So, x plus 2 is equal to plus or minus square root of 1. What is square root of 1? Square root of 1 is 1, plus or minus square root of 1 is 1. So, x plus 2, I am writing the same here, x plus 2 is equal to plus or minus 1. So, now we have two numbers we are going to solve. So, x plus 2 is equal to positive 1. Let us solve that, and x plus 2 is negative 1. We are solving for x. So, subtract 2 both sides. So, x is equal to negative 1, 1 minus 2, negative 1. Subtract 2 both sides. X is equal to negative 1 minus 2, negative 3. So, the solution set for this problem is negative 3 comma negative 1. That is your answer. So, now you know how to solve a quadratic equation by square root method. And then next you will see how to solve quadratic equation by completing the square method. Okay, the next method is solving quadratic equations by completing the square method. So, solve each equation by completing the square method. By completing the square method. So, you have to do this way. So, make sure to read the question at least 2 times and then start working on the problem. So example 1, solve this equation by completing the square method. X squared plus 4x is equal to 21. So when you solve these equations by completing the square method, what you do, you keep the x squared term and x term on one side, and you keep the constant on the other side. And then what we have to do, the first step is check whether the coefficient of x squared is 1. If it is not 1, then divide by that coefficient both sides. But here what is the coefficient of x? X squared. Coefficient of x squared is 1. So that's the first step you have to see. First step you have to do. So coefficient of x squared is equal to 1. We are good. We can move on to the next step. So the next step is, once you check that is 1, the next step, check the coefficient of x. What is the coefficient of x? Whatever number right by x in front of x is the coefficient. So coefficient of x is positive 4. If it is a negative, you have to write a negative. So the method here is, after you find the coefficient of x, you divide by 2. This is the method to solve any quadratic equation by completing the square method. So divide by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now square it. You get a 4. So after you check the coefficient of x squared as 1, if it is not 1, divide both sides by that number, make it as 1. Next is coefficient of x. Coefficient of x in this problem, 4. Divide by 2, you get 2. You always divide by 2. So you get the number. In this case, 4 divided by 2, 2. Now the next step is square that. Whatever number you get, square that. So you got 4. So what we are going to do is, we are going to add that 4. Whatever number you get there, after you square that, we are going to add the same number both sides. So here we have x squared plus 4x. That's what we have here. This side we have 21, right? This is what we have. I'm going to add 4 both sides. See, 4 both sides. That 4. We didn't alter the problem. So we are good. So now what we have to do, we have to write this as a square. Okay. So x squared plus 4x plus 4. You can immediately write, when we follow these steps, you can immediately write this as x plus x. Go back here and check this. When you divide the coefficient of x by 2, whatever number you got there, that's a positive 2. So plus 2 square. If you got like a negative 3 there, for example, if you got, when you divide this by 2, you got a negative 3, negative 3. Okay, so whatever you get there, that's, so this square is this. If you are not sure what you can do, you can always check. This is x plus 2 times x plus 2. You get this. When you distribute, add the like terms, you get this. So this is nothing but x plus 2 the whole squared. What is this? 25. Now do you see? We can use the previous method, that is the square root method. So x plus 2 square, something square is 25. So what is the square root method? I tell you. So this one is, something square is a number, so that something is equal to plus or minus square root of 25. Don't forget the plus or minus. Don't just do the square root both sides. Always when something square is, x plus 2 square is 25, x plus 2 is plus or minus square root of 25. What is square root of 25? 5. So x plus 2 is equal to plus or minus 5. So let me write it here. So we have two numbers, positive 5 and negative 5. So x plus 2 is positive 5, x plus 2 is negative 5. So now we can solve for x. So x is equal to 3. Here we are solving for x, subtract 2. So x is equal to negative 7. So we solved for x. We got x as positive 3 and x is negative 7. And we got two solutions. And these are the solutions for this problem. negative 7 comma 3. So this is how you solve the quadratic equation by completing the square method. So like I said, you have to try a lot of problems to do all of your quizzes and exams well. Okay, thank you.